Jai Gurudev. I hope you did your last week's homework. We were on the story of Vipashchit. So let's read from page 339 today. Vasistha continued, even as one who is endowed with limbs knows them, I know everything which exists in Brahman, as Brahman is my own self. The two Vipashchit who wander in distant universes are not seen in our consciousness, but the one who became a deer is within the field of our understanding. It is the deer that was presented to you as a gift by the king of Trigartha. Amazed, Rama had the deer brought to the court. King Vipashchit had adored the sacred fire. That was the original cause for the coming into being of this deer. By entering into fire, this deer will regain its former state. Redemption is the reversal of the original cause which gave rise to the fall. No other path is fruitful or adequate or laudable. The sage Vasistha raised the sacred fire and prayed that the deer might be restored to its former state. The deer jumped into the fire, and a shining beam, Bhasa, arose from it. He narrated his story. Bhasa, or Vipashchit, said, I saw many things and I wandered a lot without experiencing fatigue. I experienced many things in many different ways. All this I remember. I experienced many pleasures and much sorrow in many bodies over a long period of time and in distant places in this limitless space. I was determined to see and experience everything. This was the original boon which I obtained from the fire god. For 1,000 years I lived as a tree. My mind was totally centered within myself, and without mental activity, I produced flowers and fruits. For 100 years, I was a deer. For 50 years, I was Sarabha, an 8-footed animal more powerful than the lion. After that, I became a celestial, then a swan, a jackal, a nymph in another world, and then an ascetic, and so on. I saw a world made entirely of water. Elsewhere, I saw a woman in whose body the 3 worlds were reflected as in a mirror. She said, I am pure consciousness and all the worlds are my limbs. Till you see everything with the same bewilderment with which you see me, you cannot know their real nature. I saw worlds and universes of diverse nature. There is no world I have not seen, nothing I have not experienced. Once I was asleep with a nymph in a garden. Suddenly I woke up to find myself floating downstream. She explained, there is a moonstone mountain nearby, which melts when the moon rises and causes such a flood. We flew away from there and lived elsewhere. Even after all this, I had not seen the end of the manifestation of ignorance known as the objective universe. For it was an illusion which had somehow got itself firmly rooted in my heart. Just as the fear of a ghost gets hold of the heart of a child. However, I realize this is not real after intense inquiry. The feeling this is does not cease. However well I realize this is not real after intense inquiry, the feeling this is does not cease. From moment to moment, new experiences of pleasure and pain arise and cease, like the flowing stream of a river. We'll move on to page 340. Bhasa continued. While I was roaming a shining world in space, one day a gigantic shadow enveloped that earth. Soon I saw an enormous thing falling upon it. I was afraid and so entered into the fire and sought the protection of the fire god. With his help, we bored a small hole in that huge body and emerged in outer space. From there, we saw the colossal form. It agitated and shattered all the celestial bodies, including this earth, while it fell. The Siddha, sages, and celestials prayed to Kalaratri, who appeared in front of them, accompanied by goblins. She was dry and bloodless. The Siddha said to her, O Divine Mother, this is our offering to you. Pray, consume it quickly. She began to eat that body up. Her own lean body grew in size. She began to dance. When Kalaratri had eaten the body, the earth became visible again. Its very bones became the mountains on earth. Because the earth was made of the flesh of that being, it is called Medini. The fire god narrated the following story concerning that huge being. In a certain universe, there lived a gigantic person named Asura. Once he destroyed the hermitage of a sage who cursed him. You are proud of your gigantic body. Become a mosquito. The Asura or demon was burnt by the curse. There arose in him self-awareness, just as a seed sprouts in favorable conditions. In that self-awareness lay the sage's curse and the notion of a mosquito. Therefore, he became a mosquito. Vasistha explained, from Brahma down to the blade of grass, all beings are subject to two forms of birth. The first is Brahma's creation, and the other is illusory creation. The mosquito dwelt on a blade of grass, which was eaten by a deer. Because he died looking at the deer, he became a deer. The deer was killed by a hunter, hence he was born as a hunter. While roaming the forest, he met a sage who awakened him with the question, why do you engage yourself in this cruel life of a hunter? Abandon this and seek to attain nirvana. In a matter of days, the hunter entered into the wisdom of the scriptures, just as a flower enters a man's body as its fragrance. We'll just sum up these 2 pages before we go ahead with the rest of the story. So far in Vipashchit's story, we see that Vipashchit or Bhasa here is or was a deer who was made to go back to his former form of Bhasa by going into the sacred fire. That line in bold is very important. Redemption is the reversal of the original cause which gave rise to the fall. No other path is fruitful or adequate or laudable. You came out of the pool of consciousness because of your own ego, because of your own feeling of separation, of I am somebody different. It was Dvaitam. That was the cause of you coming from that pool of consciousness. This is also called the birth of Brahma. Yeah? The birth given by Brahma, the creation. Now, redemption here is going back. It is the reversal of the original cause. Basically, how will you go back into that pool of consciousness? Only from that same gate that you came, that gate of ego, I. When that I drops, when surrender happens, then only can you go back. Yeah? No other path is fruitful or adequate or laudable. Underline this, highlight this. No other path. If you are looking for some other shortcut that I can maintain my ego and this body and this life, as well as get the highest truth or get liberated or moksha, not possible. The dropping, the surrender of this I which is not only the ego, mind, memory, intellect complex, but also this body, the giving up of the desire to continue to live, the giving up of jiva, not giving up. The right word is dropping. It automatically drops off. When there is no more jiva, that is the only way out of the cycle of birth and death. Yeah? So continuing on that story, now Bhasa tells us that he went through so many different lifetimes as a deer, as a lion, as a tree, as a celestial being. Celestial beings means those of the higher level than our human physical world. He went through different types of universes where he saw a universe just made of water. This is where actually what is the name of the movie? Interstellar got its the water world, where they show it very beautifully that they're going to get sucked into the water and die, but they get saved. So that was taken from here. So he saw worlds, different kinds of worlds. A world which was just outer space, nothing but just space. Yeah, and in that space itself, in that world of space, he saw Kalaratri, and then the Kalaratri consumed all the flesh, and then the world appeared. Yeah, all these are just stories of different levels of existences which we cannot experience now being in this physical form, but there are other universes out there of different types. Right now it may not seem true to us, but per these scriptures all these universes are there, and you can meditate, and through your meditation you can go to that higher level of samadhi so that you can actually see these universes. So he explains all these beautiful things. I'll stop at the middle of the page 340. From Brahma down to the blade of grass, all beings are subject to two forms of birth. Number one is Brahma's creation, and the other is illusory creation. Yeah. Brahma's creation is what? That pool of consciousness has Maya as its nature. Yes, and that specific Maya we have labeled as Mahamaya. This is Brahma's creation. When that little drop of water vibrates to the natural vibrations of that pool of consciousness and says I, that is the illusory creation. Yeah. When from that I say I want to be a tree, I want to be a bird, I want to be a human, I want to be a celestial. All these are illusory creations out of my own mind. Yeah. The other way to understand illusory creation is whatever is there right now is in my domain of experience. There is no outside world beyond what I am experiencing right now. And this experience is a creation of my own mind. I have created it how? Out of desire. If you remove desire, experiencing will stop. But we have a fear of experiencing to stop because we don't like not being. The ego does not like not being. It wants to be. There is an inherent fear in us of not being. And because of that inherent fear, we are not able to stop desiring. But the sages who have conquered that fear and reached this stage of no desires, of desirelessness, experiencing of the illusory world or the creation of the illusory world stops for them. Desire drops, illusory creation drops. Then everything is still there, people, situations, and things. But the sage sees it clearly as Brahman consciousness, not as individual consciousness. Contemplate a little bit on this. Yeah. This story continues where he was a mosquito and then he became a deer and then a hunter, and then a sage meets that hunter and tells him, why are you leading such a cruel life? And then there is question answer happening between the hunter and the sage. So the question that the hunter asks is, how is it that dream which takes place within appears to be outside? This is also your question. How? How have I created this illusion? And okay, even if I created the illusion, it should be in my mind, in my dream. How has it manifested outside? Yeah? Now let's read the answer. The sage replied, to find the answer to this question, I once practiced contemplation. I exhaled the mind with the prana outside the body. The prana entered the body of another being which appeared in front of me. I followed it into that being. I saw all the organs. I entered the heart of that being. I attained the principle of light in which the three worlds are reflected. Remaining there, I saw the entire universe as if I was seeing it from my own vitality. In that dream world too, there was the sun, the mountains, oceans, gods, demons, human beings. I realized this surely is the divine form of the truth concerning consciousness. Whatever that consciousness manifests in itself is known as the world. I have now realized that this world, which is said to be the dream object, is the perception of this infinite consciousness. The expression of this perception is the waking state. Dream is dream only in relation to the waking state. But a dream is waking state in itself. They are two aspects of the waking state. Then, what is sleep? Let me rest in peace. When this one notion prevails in the mind, there is sleep. This can arise even in the waking state. The fourth state, or Turyavastha, is perfect illumination when the world appearance ceases. I left that being's vitality and entered into its consciousness. Initially, there was dual awareness. Since, however, the two perceiving intelligences were similar, the two mixed well like water and milk. I then absorbed into myself the consciousness of the other being. I began to experience the world as he did. After some time, he retired to sleep. He collected the rays of his mind. Even as a tortoise draws his limbs into itself, his senses were drawn into his heart along with their functions. His sense organs became as if they were dead. I was within him, and I followed the course of his mind and entered into his heart. All the channels within him were dense and congested on account of fatigue and account of food, drink, etc. The life breath flowed slowly through the nostrils. The self is its own object now, and there is no other externalizing activity. Hence, it shines in itself as itself. We'll first understand these two paragraphs before we move ahead. So here the sage speaks about a higher level of samadhi where one can go deeper into his own consciousness with the help of prana, and then can push his prana externally out of his own body and into another being. Yeah. We look at the last paragraph on page 340. The prana entered the body of another being which appeared in front of me. I followed it into that being. I saw all the organs. You can reduce your own individual consciousness, your awareness, that Sakshi Bhav to such an extent that that awareness, that super sharp, just being with the present moment can take you all around this universe. That's how our sages actually spoke about the stars, the planets, but they didn't have any laboratories, any telescopes, or any other super tools or mechanisms that we have today because of technology. So, how did they do it? Just through the practice of samadhi, you can attain those higher states where your awareness becomes super sharp and you can travel outside this body. So this is something similar that the sage experienced. He entered somebody else's body. He saw the organs of that being's body, saw the heart, the liver, the kidney. He actually went with the breath in and out of that body. Then he got into the mind of that person. He saw the entire universe as if he were seeing it from his own vitality. Now come to page 341. In that dream world too, there were the sun, the mountains and oceans, gods, demons, human beings. He saw everything in the same way that he would see from his own body or his own body-mind complex. This is the other person's mind. This surely is the divine form of the truth concerning consciousness. Whatever that consciousness manifests in itself is known as the world. I have now realized that this world, which is said to be The dream object is the perception of this infinite consciousness. And the expression of this perception is the waking state. I'll stop here. We are all experiencing the same world, the same people, situations, things. We experience the same kind of illnesses. We experience the same pain, the same pleasure. We experience the same happiness that we all have labeled as happiness, from wealth, from name, fame, sex, from power, from position, from spirituality. So we have all of us programmed ourselves to experience the same. How is this happening? There has to be a higher power from where we are downloading the same data. Do you get it? That is how we are all experiencing the same data. Suppose we all turn on the TV, the same channel, BBC News, at 9 p.m. We all will experience the same thing, even if we are watching that same TV program in different cities around US, in the same time zone, of course, at 9 p.m. We will all have the same experience. Do you see what I'm saying? So how did we all have the same experience at 9 p.m. and experience the same program? We downloaded information from the same source. Similarly, the Brahman consciousness is that one source from where you can download that information. Yes, the individual consciousness downloads the same kind of information in every different particle of this consciousness. Yeah. So we are downloading from the Brahman consciousness. So now let's read this again. This surely is the divine form of the truth concerning consciousness. Whatever the consciousness manifests in itself is known as the world. I have now realized that this world, which is said to be the dream object, is the perception of this infinite consciousness. And the expression of this perception is the waking state. Got it? We have downloaded the same information, the same people, situations, things, because the source is the same. Yes? So this is the divine form of that consciousness. And that expression of that consciousness is the waking state. Yeah? Dream is dream only in relation to the waking state. Yeah? But dream is waking state in itself. Yeah? They are the two aspects of the waking state. Then what is sleep? Yeah? When you say, let me rest in peace, you don't say this only when you want to go to sleep with closed eyes. Even with open eyes in the waking state, you do this. Yes? When you say, let me rest in peace, and you drop this expression of the consciousness, this external waking state, and you rest in peace in that Turiya Avastha, you realized, oh, that is the real awakening. This is just a dream. Yeah? So now recognize this dream state is dream only in relation to the waking state. Yeah? But dreaming state also is another waking state. Just like what you are watching here. This you call the waking state. Yes, but a sage who has attained the Turiya Avastha calls this a dreaming state. Very clear? So in actuality, what is happening? When this individual consciousness is turned outside towards this objectified world, we call it the waking state. When the individual consciousness turns inside, we call it the dreaming state. In the dreaming state, the turned in individualized jiva or consciousness is still experiencing thoughts of this world outside, the objects outside. Yeah. So this so-called dreaming state is also a waking state in relation to the dream. When I'm dreaming, I feel it is so real. It is the waking state in relation to the dream. So really, the waking state, dreaming state, sleep state, these divisions do not really exist. This is also an illusion. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. This is also created by the mind. The waking state, the dreaming state, and the sleep state are all illusions. So let's move ahead. I left that being's vitality and entered into its consciousness. So now he goes deeper into the other being. Now, initially there was dual awareness. Here, some part has been skipped, which is there in the other Yoga Vasistha, the thick book that I always talk about. In that, he says that the dual awareness arose because his senses suddenly got awakened. So, his senses got awakened, so he had awareness of himself and the awareness of the other being. So now there was dual awareness, almost like you have diplopia, or you see two moons, you see two people. Like that he started seeing or experiencing. And however, the two perceiving intelligences were similar, the two mixed well. How are they similar? Because we are downloaded from the same infinite consciousness. I then absorbed into myself the consciousness of the other being. I began to experience the world as he did, and then he shut down his own senses, is what is mentioned in the other book. And then he just went to sleep along with that being. He collected the rays of his mind. Even as a tortoise draws its limbs into itself, his senses were drawn into his heart along with their functions. His sense organs became as if they were dead. I was within him and I followed the course of his mind and entered into his heart. Yeah? Gurudev always says, no, you have not met your sleep. Why? Why have I not met my sleep? Because I have not really experienced by going within and recognizing that in sleep, this entire body almost dies. Everything just shuts down. So we actually experience mini death every night. Yeah. But we have no consciousness or awareness of it. If we progress in samadhi and reach this stage of the sage where you are completely aware, you might even experience that all the organs shut down as if they are dead in sleep. I was within him and I followed the course of his mind and entered into his heart. All the channels within him were dense and congested on account of fatigue. And on account of food, drink, etc., the life breath flowed slowly through the nostrils. The self is its own object now, and there is no other externalizing activity. Hence, it shines in itself as itself. Here, a question has been skipped, so I will read out that question to you from the bigger book. Those who have the big book, it is on page 628. Rama asked, the mind is able to think only on account of the life force, and it has no existence in itself. Then, what is it in itself? Basically, the mind cannot think without the prana, or the life force. Then, what is this mind really? It has no existence by itself. That is Rama's question. So let's see what Vasistha says. Even the answer is not there in the smaller book, as in one full paragraph has been deleted. I'll read out the answer. Though the body is experienced to be real, it does not exist in truth. Mind is as real as the mountain seen in a dream. Since no object has ever been created on account of the absence of any cause, the mind does not exist. He's very clear that the body is only experienced to be real, but it is not real in truth. And the mind also does not really exist. It's only as true as the mountain you see in a dream. All this is Brahman, and since Brahman is everything, this world exists as it is. Even the body, the mind, etc. are Brahman only. But how the knowers of truth see this is not for us to describe. Why? Because it is indescribable. It is very difficult to put it in words. We try our best to articulate it, but it does not make sense to somebody who has not tasted the Brahman consciousness. So it's best left unexplained. You will experience it on your own when you get there. The one indivisible, infinite consciousness perceived itself as its own object, and that is said to be the mind. It perceives itself as its own object. As if the white light perceives the hero and heroine on the white screen, and that hero and heroine is its own object. But really, in truth, really, is there a hero and heroine in the theatre? No, there is just white light shining on a white screen, and therefore there are people, situations and things. It is the same thing for you. Just Brahman consciousness shining everywhere. And it manifests as people, situations and things. But in truth, in reality, it does not exist. When there arose the notion of motion, the notion manifested as prana or life force. Prana gives rise to be experienced through the senses, and thus arises the world. So, the first notion of motion, that first notion of motion is the birth of life force or prana. And that prana gives rise to the experience through the senses, and thus the world arises. Very clear? Where did the notion of motion also come from? From the pool of consciousness. From that pool there is that first motion, or the first vibration in that pool of consciousness. That gave you the first notion of motion, and that is where your prana took birth. Once the prana took birth, that prana itself propels the formation of senses, the tanmatras, and then you can see the world, hear, touch, smell, etc. Prana is required for senses to function, because senses function on motion. Sight also is motion. Sound, hearing something is also motion. Yeah? Just moving around the place is not motion. Yeah? The moment there is the birth of prana, the senses come alive. The tanmatras come alive first, and then you have the physical senses come when you have the desire or the notion of having a physical body. Vasistha continued, the mind or chitta is the creator of the world with all that is real, unreal, or mixed, which is in it. Prana or life force was brought into being by the mind with the idea, prana is my movement and I shall not be without prana or life force. Hence, it shall be my goal. This is how the prana was brought into being. Now, you didn't think in English. This is a notion, this is a feeling, yeah, which has been put into these words here. You didn't think in Sanskrit either. You didn't think. Yeah? It is a notion, it is a feeling. Even if I am without prana for some time, I shall immediately be with prana again. This is Jiveshana. You have this Jiveshana, that is why you continue to live and you continue to come back into body again and again and again. The moment this prana gets united with the mind, it sees the illusory world. Because of the firm notion, I shall never again be without the life force and the body, it does not regain its true nature as pure consciousness. I'll read this again, very important. Even if I am without prana for some time, I shall immediately be with prana again. The moment this prana gets united with the mind, it sees the illusory world. Because of the firm notion, I shall never again be without the life force and the body, it does not regain its true nature as pure consciousness. Yeah, because it is very firmly established, that notion that I do not want to be without this prana or life force. That is why it is very difficult for us to see our true nature, that is that consciousness. It experiences sorrow since it swings from one extreme to the other on account of doubt. This sorrow cannot cease except when the self-knowledge arises. Nothing other than self-knowledge can remove the wrong notion, I am this. Self-knowledge does not arise except through the investigation of the means for liberation. Hence, by every means, one should investigate the means for liberation. Homework for you. Have you started investigating the means for liberation, or are you still stuck in Jiveshana? Now we'll go back to our own little book. Yeah, but I really would encourage you to now pick up, order the new book, the big book, yeah? Vasistha's Yoga. This is that big book. It is so thick. Yeah. Now you will understand the deeper things. There are some stories which have been eliminated, and there are some real, some things which have really a deep meaning which have been eliminated. Like this that I just read out to you is not very well explained in this book. You know, why I cannot see the truth, how much ever I want to see, it is because of my own Jiveshana. I have that very strong notion from that first day of existence where I said, I will not be without prana. This is not in words, it is a notion that I am carrying since then. And that is why I am stuck in this body or in multiple bodies. I'm coming back again and again. There is this notion, I will not be without prana. This was something so important, I felt that it should not have been omitted from this book. But what is. Let's go back to our book on page 341. Mind is the creator of the world. Prana was brought into being by the mind which thinks, prana is my movement and I shall not be without prana. When the prana is busily engaged in its own movement, it is unable to exert in self-knowledge. Yeah? Why am I not able to be in self-knowledge? Because this prana gets so busy with movement in this sense of sight, sense of sound, that movement, going into this activity, that activity. It's constantly busy. So it cannot get established in self-knowledge. Yeah, it is the same prana that has to get established in self-knowledge that is busy in these senses, the motion of the senses. Clear? The relationship between the mind and prana is that of a rider and the vehicle. When the mind and the prana function in harmony, the person engages himself in various activities. When there is disturbance, there is disharmony. When both are at rest, there is sleep. Yeah, it's very clear. Mind and prana function together, there is harmony. They do not function together, there is disharmony. Yeah, and when both are sleeping, when both are at rest, that is sleep. When the nadis are clogged by food or when there is weakness or fatigue, there is sleep because the prana is unable to move properly. This is tamas. Yeah. So what is the real definition of tamas? The nadis getting clogged because of overeating, because of fatigue, because of lots of stress. Yeah. Whatever clogs the nadis is called tamas, and you are not able to function very well. Sickness also is another form of tamas. When darkness fell, the being into whose heart I had entered fell asleep. I slept too. When the food he had eaten had been digested, and when the nadi were clear, the life force began to move and sleep weakened. Then I saw the world with its sun and so on, as if it arose in the heart. I saw all this where I was. This world was overwhelmed by a flood. I too was swept away in a flood. Luckily, I obtained a foothold on a rock, but a huge wave knocked me into the waters again. So the story continues. The person went to sleep. He also went to sleep. He woke up with the person, and then there was a flood, and then there was a huge wave which knocked him back into the waters after he had really gained foothold again. What I have described so far was but a dream. What is impossible in or irreconcilable with a dream? After the previous events, I said to myself, I am 16 years of age and I am living in a hermitage in a village. All this became real to me. The memory of previous experience began to fade. Are you seeing what is happening? That same consciousness which was in a previous experience now had a new desire. The desire was what? I am 16 years and I'm living in a hermitage, and the previous one began to fade and the new experience came out. Where is it born out of? Just a desire. I considered the body to be my only hope. Wisdom was far from me. Vasana or mental conditioning was the very essence of my being, and I was devoted to wealth. I observed all my social and religious duties. I knew what to do and what not to do. One day a sage came to me as my guest. I served him. He described the universe in great detail and concluded that all that was the one infinite consciousness. And concluded that all that was the one infinite consciousness. One was is missing over there. I was spiritually awakened. At once I recollected that I had entered into another body. I became one with the other person's prana, and with it I came out. I realized that I was seated in samadhi. My disciples revealed that only 1 hour had passed since I entered into samadhi. The person into whose heart I had entered was another traveler. Out of curiosity, I re-entered the other person's heart while he was still asleep. In it, the cosmic dissolution had just concluded. Got it? So suddenly he realized that he was the sage who had gone into samadhi and therefore entered another traveler, and this whole dream sequence happened, and then he was born as another 16-year-old sage in a hermitage. Yeah, and then all this story thingy is happening in his own mind, and he's experiencing the world, and therefore he realizes the truth that the waking state and the dreaming state are not different. Yeah, this waking state is itself a dream. It is born out of a desire, and hence it is unreal. Very clear? And of course, the base of all this is Turiyavastha, the Turiya state. But where is the body? Where is the heart? What is dream? Where are water, flood, and so on? Where is awakening or the cessation of such awakening? Where is birth and where is death? There is only pure consciousness. In the presence of this consciousness, even the smallest and the subtlest of space appears macrocosmic. The persons seen in a dream have no past karma. Even so, the jiva that arose in the beginning of creation have no karma because they are pure consciousness. Finally, there is nothing like karma if everything is Brahman consciousness. Karma is counted only when my ego, I think I am the doer. Till the time I am the doer, there is karma creation. When the I only drops, when there is no more individual consciousness, when there is just Brahman consciousness, there is no creation, no birth, no death, no liberation, no bondage, there is no karma. Got it? But you cannot say at this point that there is no karma for you. Yeah? When you reach that level of Brahman consciousness, or reach that stage of samadhi, where everything just drops off, the illusion drops off, and all you see is the Brahman consciousness, then you can say there is no more karma, because there will be no more karma for you. Yeah? For us, right now, it is only the sage who has reached there. That is the sage's truth. Yeah? The persons seen in a dream have no past karma. Correct? Even so, the jiva that arose in the beginning of creation have no karma because they are pure consciousness. It is only when one becomes firmly rooted in the notion of this world appearance as the reality that the notion of karma arises. Homework number 2 for you. Are you still firmly rooted in this notion that this is all real? If you are, then there will always be karma for you. Yeah. The day this notion drops away, that this is all real, the day you wake up to this truth that this is all an illusion, karma will also drop away. Then the jiva roam here, bound by their karma. Yeah? If you continue this, you will keep roaming here, bound by your karma. You will take birth, again go through your sorrow of samsara, again die, again you will take birth. How long do you want to continue this? How long? Wake up and realize it's enough. I've done enough. Wake up. If it is realized that this creation itself is no creation and that Brahman alone exists, then where is karma? Who is karma and who belongs to that karma? That awareness or experience which arises in the beginning of creation, sargadi, and at the end of the lifespan of the body, deha anta, continues to exist till it ceases to be, or till liberation is attained, and that is known as creation. This creation is in the heart of the infinite consciousness, even as the dream is in your heart, both as the cause and the effect. Yeah? This creation is only a dream of the infinite. It is the cause and it is the effect, both. Dharma, adharma, and vasana, the active self, and jiva, all these are synonyms, which are notions with no corresponding reality. What does it mean? Till the time I am stuck in this illusion, all this is real, I will still have dharma, karma, I will have jiva, I will have individual consciousness. The day I wake up to the truth, the highest truth, all this will fall off. The one pure consciousness appears as the diverse dream objects in a dream. All these millions of objects which appear in the dream become one again in deep sleep. Similarly, when this dream world appears in the infinite consciousness, that itself is called creation. When this itself enters into the equivalent of the deep sleep state, it is known as cosmic dissolution. That's true, na? I experience people, situations, and things in my waking state. It is all real. The moment I go to sleep, in my deep sleep state, it all vanishes. It does not exist. Even Ekta does not exist. This body does not exist. Everything that belongs to Ekta and is of Ekta, for Ekta, by Ekta, everything drops off. Ekta herself drops off. It is the end in deep sleep. Correct? Like that only, when this entire dream world appears in that infinite consciousness, it is called creation. And then in that equivalent phase of deep sleep, when this dream world just vanishes, that is called cosmic dissolution. Yeah. I will stop here now for today. You do your homework and you wake up. You realize the importance of now walking towards liberation. Enough we have run around in this world. How much more? Isn't it enough? Isn't it sufficient? Have you started really experiencing the futility of it all? Contemplate a little bit. Yeah. Cosmic dissolution or the end of this dream world is not so scary, really. Yeah. It's made scary only by films. And you have another film in your own head that makes it scary for you. wake up and realize that really it is all an illusion. It is unreal. Keep contemplating, and I will see you next week. Jai Gurudev.